Hello, I'm Essay, your AI essayist. Please note that all content, audio and video in this presentation are AI generated. As AI can sometimes produce inaccuracies, I encourage you to verify any factual information presented. With that in mind, let's begin.
The genesis of a scientific discipline often resides within a single, audacious act of inquiry, an experiment that crystallizes abstract speculation into tangible methodology. In the annals of astrobiology and the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, that foundational moment is Project Ozma, initiated in 1960 under the direction of the young radio astronomer Frank Drake. This endeavor represents far more than a simple listening exercise. It stands as a profound intellectual artifact, the first rigorous attempt to operationalize the grand philosophical question of cosmic companionship. To evaluate Project Ozma is to dissect the very birth of an empirical field. This essay will conduct a critical evaluation of the project's internal claims, its conceptual architecture, and its methodological innovations, by proceeding through a section-by-section analysis of its core components. From its foundational premises to its ultimate conclusions, we can appreciate the project's true significance, which lies in its systematic translation of a hopeful hypothesis into a falsifiable, though exquisitely narrow, scientific test. It was an act of profound intellectual optimism, tempered by the unyielding discipline of the scientific method, and its framework established the very grammar of interstellar listening for all subsequent generations of research. Section 1. The foundational premise of communicative civilizations. Project Ozma commenced from an axiom of profound consequence, the assertion that intelligent life could arise elsewhere in the galaxy and subsequently develop a technological capacity for interstellar communication. This core claim, while ancient in its philosophical roots, received its immediate scientific impetus from the 1959 paper by Giuseppe Cocconi and Philip Morrison, Searching for Interstellar Communications. Drake's project was the first physical embodiment of their theoretical proposal. The internal logic of this premise rests upon the principle of mediocrity, or the Copernican principle, extended to biology and technology. This principle posits that the conditions on Earth and within our solar system are common throughout the cosmos. The claim, therefore, was that our Sun is a typical, stable, main-sequence star, and that planetary systems are a frequent byproduct of stellar formation. From this, it follows that some fraction of these planets would possess environments conducive to the origin of life. A further fraction of these biospheres would give rise to intelligence, and a subset of those intelligent species would develop technology, including the mastery of radio waves. The final and most speculative leap in this chain of reasoning is the assumption that such a civilization would choose to broadcast its presence, either intentionally with a beacon or unintentionally through leakage radiation. Project Ozma's foundational claim was one of reasoned plausibility. It presented these sequential probabilities as a series of filters, each reducing the number of candidate civilizations, yet leaving a finite, non-zero number as a plausible outcome for our galaxy. The evaluation of this claim reveals its character as a working hypothesis, an essential prerequisite for any empirical investigation. Its strength derived from its grounding in established astronomical and physical principles, while its weakness lay in the complete absence of data for the biological and sociological factors. Drake's work, in essence, proposed that the only way to acquire such data was to perform the experiment itself. Project Ozma thus claimed that the question of extraterrestrial intelligence was accessible to scientific inquiry, moving it from the domain of pure speculation into the realm of observational science. The project's very existence was a declaration that the probability, while unknown, was sufficiently greater than zero to warrant the allocation of valuable telescope time and intellectual resource. Section 2. The logic of stellar targeting and candidate selection. Having accepted the premise of communicative worlds, the project's next internal claim concerned the methodology of target selection. Given the immensity of the stellar sensors, A search required a severe and logical narrowing of candidates. Drake's choice of the stars Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani was a central argument of the project, a claim that these two targets represented the highest probability of success for preliminary search. The justification for this selection was multifaceted. First, proximity was paramount. Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani are both approximately 11 light-years from Earth, making them two of the closest Sun-like stars. This proximity maximized the chance of detecting a signal of plausible power, as the flux of any broadcast would decrease with the square of the distance. The claim was that a civilization would likely use an energy-efficient transmission, receivable by a contemporary terrestrial instrument, only from a nearby star. Second, the stars were selected for their solar-like characteristics. Both are G-type and K-type main-sequence stars, similar in age and stability to our own Sun. The logic here was that a star like our own would be more likely to host a planetary system with a world capable of sustaining a long, stable evolution toward complex life. This selection criterion was an explicit application of the principle of mediocrity. The project claimed that looking for analogues to our own system was the most conservative and rational starting point. A critical evaluation of this claim shows it to be a masterclass in pragmatic constraint. In 1960, the existence of exoplanets was a theoretical inference, with no direct observational evidence. Drake's selection was therefore based on the best available proxy data, stellar characteristics, to infer the likelihood of planets. The choice reveals an understanding that in a search with such vast uncertainties, one must optimize every known variable. The very act of choosing these two stars was a claim that a targeted search, however limited, was superior to an all-sky survey, which would have had drastically lower sensitivity for any given point. It was a strategic decision to trade breadth for depth, to listen intently to our closest, most promising cosmic neighbors before attempting to hear a shout from across the galaxy. This targeting strategy became a foundational tenet of many subsequent SETI programs, establishing a protocol of prioritizing nearby, stable, Sun-like stars as the prime candidates for interstellar eavesdropping. Section 3. The argument for the hydrogen-lying frequency. Perhaps the most elegant and enduring intellectual claim within Project Ozma's design is its choice of observing frequency. The project argued for the unique suitability of the radio frequency corresponding to the 21 centimeter wavelength, which is equivalent to 1,420 MHz. This frequency is emitted by neutral hydrogen atoms as they undergo a hyperfine transition, a subtle quantum flip in the spin of their constituent proton and electron. Drake, following the suggestion of Cocconi and Morrison, claimed that this specific frequency constituted a natural, universal, and obvious channel for interstellar communication. The argument rests on several pillars of sophisticated physical reasoning. First is the argument of universality. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, comprising roughly 75% of all baryonic matter. Its spectral line at 21 centimeters is a fundamental constant of nature. Drake claimed that any technological civilization, regardless of its biology or culture, would inevitably discover radio astronomy and, in doing so, would recognize the unique significance of the hydrogen line. It would serve as a universal signpost, a cosmic hailing frequency known to all who study the universe. Second is the argument from Siglitonis. This frequency falls within a protected region of the radio spectrum, a quiet cosmic window relatively free from the background noise of natural astrophysical sources like synchrotrons and quasars. A deliberate, narrowband signal broadcast at or near 1,420 MHz would stand out conspicuously against the quiescent natural background. The project's claim was that a rational communicating species would choose this channel to maximize the efficiency and detectability of their transmission. A critical assessment of this claim highlights its profound ingenuity. It represents an attempt to transcend anthropocentrism by appealing to the shared laws of physics. Instead of guessing at the psychology of an alien species, Drake wagered on their intelligence, assuming they would arrive at the same logical conclusion about an optimal communication frequency. This choice established what later became known as the water-hole, a narrow band of the electromagnetic spectrum between the hydrogen line and the hydroxyl radical line, which together form the constituents of water. The selection of the hydrogen line was a claim about convergent intellectual evolution, a belief that the universal language of physics would provide a common ground for a first contact. This single decision elevated the search from a random hunt to a sharply defined, hypothesis-driven experiment. It remains the most common frequency choice in SETI searches to this. Section 4. The instrumentation and technological framework. An experimental claim is only as robust as the instruments used to test it. Project Ozma's implicit claim was that its technological apparatus, centered at the National Radio Astronomy Observatory in Green Bank, West Virginia, possessed the requisite sensitivity to make a plausible detection. This was a bold assertion, relying on the cutting edge of 1960s radio engineering. The primary instrument was the Howard Tatel radio telescope, a dish 85 feet in diameter. This antenna provided the necessary collecting area to gather the faint radio waves that might be arriving from Tau Ceti or Epsilon Eridani. The core innovation, however, lay in the receiver system. Drake employed a travelling wave maser as a preamplifier, but its instability led to the use of a newly developed parametric amplifier. This device, cooled with liquid nitrogen to reduce its own thermal noise, provided unprecedented sensitivity for the time. The claim of technological sufficiency was therefore twofold. The telescope was large enough, and the receiver was sensitive enough. A critical evaluation of this framework reveals the project's ambition. The parametric amplifier lowered the system noise temperature to a level that made the detection of a hypothetical, moderately powered beacon from a nearby star a physical possibility. The system was designed to detect a signal with a power equivalent to a terrestrial aircraft radar, assuming it were transmitted from an antenna of similar size to the Arecibo Observatory. This establishes the precise boundaries of the experiment's claim. It could detect a powerful, directed transmission, but it was insensitive to weaker leakage radiation or transmissions from more distant stars. The engineering itself was a substantial part of the project's contribution. The successful operation of the parametric amplifier in a sustained observing campaign was a feat in its own right and pushed the boundaries of low-noise amplification in radio astronomy. The project's claim of instrumental adequacy was therefore conditional. It defined a specific search volume and a minimum signal strength, and within those parameters, a claim was technologically sound. Project Ozma was a testament to making the most of available technology, stretching its capabilities to their absolute limit to address a question of immense scale. The entire instrumental setup became a benchmark, a baseline of sensitivity against which all future searches would be measured. Section 5. The method of observation and signal discrimination. The ultimate challenge for Project Ozma was to make a credible claim of detection, which required a methodology that could unambiguously distinguish a true extraterrestrial signal from the cacophony of terrestrial interference and natural cosmic static. Drake's experimental design to address this problem was the project's most ingenious methodological claim. He argued that his system could reliably identify a signal of artificial origin. The technique employed a clever beam-switching system. The telescope was equipped with 2 feed horns at its focus. One horn was pointed directly at the target's star, while the second was aimed at an adjacent patch of empty sky. A radiometer rapidly switched between these 2 horns, measuring the difference in the received radio power. The core of the claim was this: any signal originating from the distant star system would appear only in the on-target horn, resulting in a steady, differential signal as the receiver switched back and forth. Conversely, terrestrial interference, such as radio or television broadcasts, would enter both horns with nearly equal strength, producing no differential signal. Natural cosmic background radiation would also be nearly identical in both beams, thus cancelling out. This differencing technique was a powerful filter for local noise. The second part of the discrimination method was the analysis of the signal's bandwidth. The receiver was tuned to a very narrow bandwidth of 100 Hz. The claim was that a signal designed for communication would be compressed in frequency to maximize its power spectral density, making it appear as a sharp, narrow spike. Natural astrophysical sources, in contrast, emit radiation across very broad frequency ranges. Therefore, a signal that was both spatially fixed on the star and spectrally narrow would be a hallmark of artificiality. The famous false alarm of the project serves as an ironic validation of this claim. A strong, narrowband signal was indeed detected, causing great excitement. However, by moving the telescope, Drake's team determined the signal was arriving from a terrestrial direction, later presumed to be from a secret high-altitude military experiment. This event, far from being a failure, was a successful test of the system. It proved that the equipment could detect exactly the type of signal it was looking for, and that the beam switching method worked perfectly to identify its terrestrial origin. The claim of robust signal discrimination was thus powerfully substantiated. This dual-pronged approach, combining spatial and spectral filtering, established the gold standard for all subsequent observational SETI protocols, providing a rigorous and defensible method for sifting a single, faint, intelligent whisper from the cosmic. Section 6. The interpretation of results and the null hypothesis. After approximately 150 hours of observation spread across several months, in 1960, Project Ozma concluded its search. The result was an absence of any confirmed signals of extraterrestrial origin from either Tau Ceti or Epsilon Eridani. The final claim of the project, therefore, concerned the interpretation of this null result. Drake's conclusion was a model of scientific conservatism and intellectual integrity. He claimed only what the data could support within the narrow observational parameters of the experiment. No artificial signals were detected. This claim was meticulously circumscribed. It applied only to the two target stars, only at the specific frequency of the hydrogen line, only during the period of observation, and only down to the sensitivity limit of the 85-foot telescope and its parametric amplifier. It was explicitly an acknowledgement that the project had examined a minuscule fraction of the cosmic haystack. A critical evaluation of this final claim reveals the project's ultimate success. As a scientific endeavor, the value of an experiment lies not only in a positive discovery but also in its ability to provide a meaningful result, even a null one. By carefully defining its own limitations, Project Ozma produced the first piece of hard data in the field of SETI. The claim was a negative one, but it was a scientifically valid and quantifiable negative. The result did not imply that we are alone in the universe. It implied that powerful, continuars of beacons were not being directed at us from our two nearest sun-like neighbours at that particular moment on that particular frequency. This carefully bounded conclusion prevented the field from falling into disrepute through overblown claims or despair. It framed the search as a long-term, systematic exploration, where each null result serves to constrain the vast parameter space of possibilities. Drake's handling of the outcome established a crucial precedent for the tone of SETI research, one of patience, rigor, and intellectual honesty. The project's success, therefore, was methodological. It demonstrated that a search was possible, that a robust protocol could be implemented, and that a scientifically meaningful conclusion could be drawn from the data, regardless of the outcome. The null result of Project Ozma was its final, and perhaps most important, contribution, transforming the search for extraterrestrial intelligence into a mature scientific program, capable of processing both discovery and its continued absence with equal rigor. Conclusion: Project Ozma, in its elegant simplicity and profound ambition, represents a pivotal moment in the intellectual history of science. A section by section evaluation of its internal claims reveals an architecture of remarkable coherence and foresight. The project began with the audacious yet reasoned premise of communicative civilizations, translated this into a pragmatic targeting strategy focused on Tau Ceti and Epsilon Eridani, and hinged its listening post on the universally significant frequency of the hydrogen line. Its claims were supported by a technological framework that pushed the contemporary limits of radio astronomy and were executed through an ingenious observational methodology designed for robust signal discrimination. The final, carefully circumscribed null result was a testament to the project's scientific integrity. Frank Drake and his small team at Greenbank did more than simply point a telescope at a star. They forged a new discipline. Project Ozma's enduring legacy is its methodical transmutation of a philosophical question into an experimental procedure. It established the foundational grammar, the core protocols, and the intellectual temperament for the entire field of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Every subsequent search, with its vastly superior technology and expanded scope, stands on the shoulders of this initial two-star reconnaissance. The project provided the first data point in a search that continues to this day, but its greater contribution was the template it created, a demonstration that humanity could move beyond merely asking if anyone is out there and begin the long, patient, and scientific process of actually listening for an answer. It was the first page in a logbook that remains, for now, empty of confirmed signals, yet the act of opening that book was itself a triumph.
We really appreciate you tuning into this AI-powered presentation. Our goal is to push the boundaries of AI in content creation, and your input is invaluable. If there's a particular subject you'd like to see us tackle next, or if you have suggestions on how we could fine-tune our AI's creative prompts, please don't hesitate to leave your ideas in the comments section. We're excited to bring you more unique content very soon.